Eddie, when you were a brilliant student, when you were the savant of Decatur Central High School, or for those of you folks who are listening, wherever you went to high school, whether it be in Indiana or elsewhere, maybe you went to St. Francis de Sales in Chicago. Maybe you went to New Trier. Maybe you're from Cincinnati and you went to Moeller. Maybe you went to Lutheran here in town. Maybe you went to Pendleton Heights. Maybe you went to Eastern Green, Terre Haute South, whatever it might be. At any point when you were in high school, did you have to read or be aware of or study at all Charles Dickens?
Yes.
What would you say is Charles Dickens' most famous book? He has several, I guess, actually. But he has one that begins with, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." I believe that's the beginning of the book. The book is A Tale of Two Cities. And we don't have a tale of two cities here in Indianapolis, but we have a tale perhaps of two seasons or a tale of two players. Because when I'm looking at the franchises in this town, a tale of two franchises, I see similarities and I see differences. On this Monday, that is, hallelujah, we made it, the 1st of March. Yes. I always consider it now. We're out of the woods, everybody. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Give yourselves a hand. Yes, it was cold yesterday. Yes, it's still chilly out today. But now when we get snow, when we get a flurry, when we get a little bit of ice, whatever it might be, we now know that, you know what? It's the beginning of the end. Okay, sure. We might get a snowstorm. It'll last for 2 days, and help is on the way, to quote Mike Davis. St. Patrick's Day is around the corner. March Madness in the NCAA tournament. The Big Ten tournament I already saw right down on Monument Circle. We don't have steps, but we got a big BIG for the Big Ten tournament coming to town. So it's here. Let's go, right? I'm here for it. But during this time, as I'm looking at it, I think to myself, okay, last night, or more specifically yesterday afternoon at the Pacer game, A Tale of Two Seasons, Part 1. Since the All-Star break, Tyrese Haliburton is in a different level. He now has a 10-1, actually more, it's more than that, it's 11.2 or something to 1 assist-to-turnover ratio. He has turned the ball over 6 times. His next assist will be the 70th since the All-Star break. That's causing me to not say the number because I'm mature. And Haliburton yesterday, again, was the one. He did 2 things, did Tyrese Haliburton in that game against the Bulls. Number 1, he was aggressive and he shot the ball when he needed to. At one point, the Pacers had already hit 12 threes by midway through the second quarter, I think. But everything started with Haliburton. And, yes, Aaron Nesmith had a heck of a game, and we'll get into that over the course of the show. But Haliburton was aggressive offensively. He distributed the basketball. And Tyrese Haliburton looks like, I don't know whether it's health, whether it's confidence, or whether it's just energy. And maybe we're seeing that, in fact, last year he was worn down. But a season ago, the All-Star break seemingly was the beginning of the end for this. That's a weird way of saying it, but the dream and the zone that Tyrese Haliburton was in led up to the All-Star break, and then fatigue just seemed to kick in where it just wasn't the same, even though I realize they had a great playoff run, and then he had to rest at the end of the game, or at the end of the series with Boston. But this year, since the All-Star break, it's as if the break gave him his Red Bull. Literally, he went into the All-Star break, and he didn't have to play host for the All-Star game. He didn't have to play in the All-Star game and start and do all the things that go into it. And so as a result of that, he seems to be completely rejuvenated and back into the Tyrese Haliburton that lifted the Pacers. And you saw yesterday what happens when he's playing at that level. Now, the other thing that he did yesterday that I don't know if people noticed as much. There was a play late second quarter where he hit a shot and he got in the ear of Josh Giddey and starts chirping to him a little bit. And then Giddey came down and was trying to back down, and instead of going to the hot hand of, Kobe White was red hot at one point, but Josh Giddey started kind of doing things on his own, and I do think it's because he and Haliburton had this, and afterwards I watched, and they gave handshakes and enjoyed a smile together. But during the game, the competitive juices of both of them were going, and Haliburton absolutely was in his ear and got in his head. He got in his head. And it fractured what Chicago was wanting or needing to do, because Chicago had great symmetry and great movement offensively until Giddey basically became this vacuum where the ball wasn't going away from him, and he would get it on the block, and everybody else is standing around like, dude, there's other pieces on the floor here. But Haliburton so far this year, post-All-Star break, tale of two seasons from a year ago. The All-Star break a year ago seemed to wear him down. The All-Star break this year seemed to reinvent him. Another tale of two franchises. How about that of are you launching rockets over there, Eddie?
That's right, Jake. Just getting my brain going.
Can the audience hear the computer whirling over there?
No.
It's I mean, I don't know what's going on, but all of a sudden, is it a computer? Is that what that is?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a computer
rebooting
fan. I think it's the fan trying to cool it off.
Maybe it's trying to get into my email.
Maybe.
Because I'm shut out of that. Two franchises, two young players at different periods, one of which all of a sudden, just when we're getting familiar, now is, when you see the headline, going away, and the other, just when he became unfamiliar, you see the headline that he may be coming back. We'll begin with the news over the weekend that the Colts, no surprise here, the list of potential quarterbacks that the Colts might explore to come in and try to push Anthony Richardson. And this basically is the Colts saying that in window dressing, they're going to create competition for Anthony Richardson, but in reality, they're not. They're still sticking with Anthony Richardson. One of the quarterbacks that was listed, none other.
I saw like 6 listed, Jake, which was utterly shocking to me.
Which now, and there were, Trey Lance was one of them, right?
Uh-huh.
I believe Daniel Jones was one of them.
Uh-huh.
And then, there it is, baby. Jacoby Brissett.
Oh, yeah, and Justin Fields.
Bring back Jacoby Brissett, baby. Jacoby Brissett is somebody that is familiar with the organization. The organization is familiar with him. He is somebody that when he was here, it is the definition of – the interesting thing is when Jacoby Brissett was here, he was essentially a game-managing quarterback. And if you are coming in to compete with Anthony Richardson, what you are doing is you are basically saying we're going to have two quarterbacks here, and whichever way we go, and this is the problem they ran into this year, I think, is that you have in Jacoby Brissett, if he's a game-managing quarterback, and then Anthony Richardson, which is a game-driving quarterback. Your offense is going through everything Anthony Richardson schematically when he is your quarterback. You are designing to suit the skills and the versatile talent of Anthony Richardson. Whereas with Jacoby Brissett, you are doing it to basically let your defense keep you in games and go in on 4th and short and occasionally throw 6-yard slants. I mean, that's what they did. So when I saw Jacoby Brissett possibly coming back, I thought to myself, this probably is better radio fodder than it is in reality. But I'm curious what people would think if, in fact, Jacoby Brissett is what they end up with. It would feel kind of like when you're super excited and wait all night in line for the big sale at the store the night of Thanksgiving, hoping to get 70% off, and you go in and you find out that it's 6 items that are 4 years old that nobody wants, that are all – I'm not saying nobody wants Jacoby Brissett, but you get my point. It would be a letdown. I think for most people it would be a letdown. Now, in terms of a young player, tale of two franchises here, that may be, and I don't think that in reality this means that we are going to see less of this guy in main games. But let's talk about the continued journey of Jarace Walker. If you did not see this report earlier today, the Pacers have announced that Jarace Walker and Johnny Furphy are on their way to the Mad Ants to take yet another stint within the G League. Now, 100% I am guilty of this. I'm guilty of early in his tenure, and it's still early in his tenure, granted. But throughout his rookie year and then early on, even this year, saying, guys, are we going to have the discussion here about Jarace Walker and what he is bringing to the table versus where and how he was acquired and what was expected of him? I didn't want to say the word bust, but I think people started whispering about it. And then this year, due to attrition, he started getting into rotation because you had Nembhard that was out. You had Mathurin, who was out last night, was out. You had, and I realized different positions from Nembhard to Jarace Walker, somewhat same position for Benedict Mathurin, but Walker can, you slide pieces around, right? Ben Shepherd, when those guys aren't available, it creates opportunity for Jarace Walker. I'm going to say this right now at 12 p.m. and 12 seconds, okay? The Indiana Pacers absolutely, and you mark my words on this, the Indiana Pacers absolutely still believe in and are intrigued by and promised by the potential of Jarace Walker. 150%, I can tell you that. They believe in his versatility. They believe in his athleticism. And they believe in his ability to play and be somebody that can contribute to them. There are two things that are unfortunate. The first is that when Jarace Walker, and remember when we had him on, and I keep going back to this because it just hangs, I can still hear him saying it. When he admitted to the fact that it was a matter of the game slowing down for him, which is such a stereotypical thing to say, but it is true. You could literally see as Jarace Walker was running down the floor on a break, and Tyrese Haliburton is throwing a beautiful no-look pass to him in stride. And Jarace Walker's catching the ball for a pull-up, but right as he's about to pull up, unfortunately, his feet are still moving 2 more steps. Or when Jarace Walker is on a break and he's dribbling on a fast break and he knows exactly where he needs to go, but he's dribbling the basketball and unfortunately the ball is 2 feet ahead of him because he's dribbling faster than he's running. I know that those things sound weird, but the pace of the game had not yet slowed down for him. And he didn't feel comfortable yet in the pace of the game and just letting things naturally flow for him. And then about 2 months ago, you could visibly see when it clicked. And all of a sudden, you were thinking, oh gosh, he does have a pretty nice outside touch. Oh wow, he does have pretty good vision and is a really good passer out of the low block. Oh, he can step out and guard some people. Things started to slow down, and in 100% you could see where Jarace Walker was a guy that you said, you know what, he may not be at right now, he might not be a starter, but he absolutely is showing that he can be a very reliable, solid piece of their rotation that can play a couple of different positions and be a guy, and I've always said this, a guy that there's going to be a Jarace Walker game. There's going to be a game some point in game 2 of the first round of the playoffs where he comes off the bench and has 17 points and 9 rebounds and 3 assists, and he's the storyline that changed the complexion of that game. And the next day it's like, oh, wow, Pacers brought out their wild card. But because he's been assigned to the G League, you say to yourself, that's it. The Pacers have given up. The Pacers have turned the page. The Pacers are this is a bust, whatever. I don't think we can say that. I think this legitimately is that Indiana realizes the sign of Jarace Walker going to the G League, to me, tells me more about their belief in him versus their dismissal of him. Because if Jarace Walker was somebody that they believed it was time to turn the page on, they would not be using him with the Mad Ants in the G League to get him minutes, because they want to make sure that now that they've got the engine running a little bit, that it stays running at that same pace, and that they can allow the game to stay at the same pace for him and not let that rust settle in where he's got to go back to starting over in terms of the game slowing down. So I realize that people are going to think that's what this is, a demotion. It's a matter of the Pacers absolutely have been thinking to themselves and saying to themselves, this guy needs to be on the floor, but we are healthy right now, so there just aren't the minutes necessarily to get him on the floor. I mean, last night he did because Mathurin was out. Johnny Furphy is one that they definitely believe in, but he's really young. I don't know, is he 20 yet, Eddie, or is he 19?
I think he just turned 20.
So just out of Kansas, an international player, and they really like Johnny Furphy's ability, not only, and this, you're going to be surprised when I say this, the coaching staff of the Pacers are very impressed with Johnny Furphy's future or potential ability to guard on the wing. They actually think he has pretty good wing defense skill, and he's a decent shooter. He's got a pretty quick release, so he doesn't need a lot of time in rotation. So, but again, young guy, so instead of just having him collect dust, let's get him out there, let's get him to the Mad Ants and let him get minutes there. So that news coming today for the Pacers. And then you got Indiana and Purdue on the college side of things, and I will ask Eddie Garrison this question. Mike Chappell going to join us coming up just a little, or excuse me, Don Fischer just a little bit. Mike Chappell's on the show today as well at the top of the hour, but Don Fischer in the Pacific Northwest, if we can get him out of the coffee store.
Can't confirm.
He's up and early, man.
Yeah.
He's up early out there because they're in the West Coast, obviously, for this two-step. Really good against Washington. And Malik Renew, really good. Question is it enough, Eddie? I will ask you right now. You had an interesting message that you sent me over the weekend to once again confirm my clairvoyance, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, let's say Indiana, and I think they're going to beat Oregon, actually, but let's say they lose to Oregon and come back and beat Ohio State. Is that enough? Are they in?
I think they would be right on the bubble. They would be a team that gets bumped out of the field if there was a bid stealer or two in one of the other conferences. So, in my estimation, that is assuming that IU would, if that's in the case of Indiana losing in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. If Indiana splits between the next two, between Oregon and Ohio State, and they are able to win a game or two in the Big Ten tournament, I think they are locked in, set it, forget it, in the field.
Here's what's interesting. Do you notice the other team that is right there hanging around with them? So right now, you've got a party, right? We're having a party. Everybody come to our party, right?
Uh-huh.
So they're having this NCAA tournament party. Northwestern hosted the first ever party, right? And then Northwestern wasn't invited to their own party for many, 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 many years. But Northwestern was the very first host of the party, and it was so much fun. They said, every March we're doing this party. So Indiana and Ohio State are both standing on the front porch trying to figure out whether or not they're invited. Indiana's standing there, and they turn around. Ohio State's the other team on the porch.
Mm-hmm.
Only room for one to get in. So it almost feels like this Indiana-Ohio State game, it might be a play-in game. A play-in game to become part of the play-in game, right?
What I'm fascinated to see, Jake, is how they play against Ohio State after Oregon, because if you look across the Big Ten, the struggles have largely been the East Coast teams traveling out west and then back east and playing. Look at Purdue, for example. They went out west, played Washington and Oregon, then they came back home and got absolutely whooped in the second half. I can't remember who it was, but they ended up losing the game because of all the traveling. How does Indiana respond?
Tough. Yeah, it's tough.
Especially if it's a game where they have to win.
Travel's tough, man. I'm telling you. As you're going to find out in a couple of weeks when I come back from Thermal Club.
It was Ohio State who beat Purdue at Mackey.
That was a big win for them.
Yes.
One of those two. I do think that Indiana probably. I think Indiana with one of these last two is in, but they probably need to get one in the Big Ten tournament as well, just to be safe.
Now, Joe Lunardi last updated his bracketology on Friday, and he had Indiana in the tournament,
right,
as an 11 seed, and
in the
they were
play-in
the
game, right?
second to against Oklahoma. Those were the first two last 4 in teams.
So Indiana would be in the play-in game against a coach that a lot of people think might be a candidate at Indiana.
Correct.
I shouldn't say a lot, but I've heard Porter Mosher's name from Oklahoma.
Correct.
Now, did you see who they'd be playing in this mock fantasy bracketology?
I'm assuming
if they were to win that play-in game.
I didn't check that far.
I looked it up, baby.
Clemson?
No, St. Mary's.
Oh, really?
My boy Randy Bennett.
The Gales.
I think we should get Randy Bennett on the show just because A, he's super fun. B, St. Mary's is like 27-4.
With your clapping, I don't know if it was Clemson.
And C, his dad is a high school basketball coach from Indiana, and his mom's from Southport. Let's just get him on. He's fun. Although, if I'm not mistaken, he disagreed with me about In-N-Out Burger last time we had him on, and said that he thought that In-N-Out Burger, that I was crazy, and In-N-Out Burger was the best. And I think In-N-Out Burger's slightly overrated for what it's worth. Purdue, on the other hand, good for, I mean, and I mean this, that sounded condescending. For Purdue, they did what they needed to do, Eddie, to just kind of get, I'm curious about this, by beating UCLA and really being in control for the better part of it. If Purdue is to hold serve here, and let's say they get into the Big Ten tournament and not even win the Big Ten tournament, but they get a couple of wins, let's say, right? And they finish, even if they finish 500 from here on out going into the tournament, does that erase the losing skid in the minds of the bracketology and where they are?
So it's a fascinating debate because I was watching ESPN College Game Day on Saturday, and they were going through like teams on the bubble. They were talking about Indiana. They were talking about North Carolina, and they mentioned that skid for Indiana. And I think it was Seth Greenberg. He was like, hey, just to remind you guys, the committee doesn't look at a specific segment of a season. They look at the entire body of work.
Right.
So whatever your record is what they examine. They don't examine if you lose 4 straight at the end of the regular season or if you lose 6 straight in the middle of the year.
See,
it's all about your resume. Who have you beaten
it
and who have you lost to?
It used to be so much about, and we're going to get somebody on from the NCAA here in the next week to discuss, kind of everything that as they're getting ready to go into Selection Sunday. But it used to be that so much of it was the way you finished the year. That was always such a calling card for Indiana and Purdue both, was that they were such better teams at the end of the year than they had been at the beginning of the year, and play of late was always such an important thing. For the Boilers, finishing up, Rutgers coming up tomorrow night, and then into the week at Illinois. That Illinois game I still think is kind of a tricky one, especially because you stop at the Beef House and you get plenty to eat there, right? So here's the question, Eddie. Don Fischer's going to join us next. Indiana was in Washington on Friday.
Washington, yeah.
That's right. And they are in Oregon.
Oregon, yeah.
Tomorrow night. Are they still, do you believe, and if you know the answer, Eddie, don't tell me, are they still in Seattle, or did they already make the trip to Eugene and now they're hanging out in Oregon? Or did they make the drive today?
I would assume.
Or the flight today?
I would assume they would be in Oregon today and doing like a practice shoot-around type deal.
Do you believe they're in Eugene, or do you think they just went to Portland and they're hanging out there and then they're going to go down?
That's a good question.
Go to Mount St. Helens, see
if it were me, I'd be hanging out in Seattle, if you know what I mean.
Well, believe you me. you ain't dropping a lot off there if you're going to Portland. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
I mean, come on. Like, pretty. Portland is to Portland is to Seattle as Indianapolis is to Chicago, both geographically and culturally speaking, if you know what I mean. They are the little brother, so to speak. All right, Don Fischer, voice of the Hoosiers. We will discuss this and find out which of the 2 Pacific Northwest states Indiana's hanging out right now. We'll do it next. So Indiana is in, and listen, I am super impressed by this. Because if I was on the West Coast, which is Pacific time, I mean, this morning I did the morning show. Those guys had me on at 9 o'clock, and I had to set 4 different alarms and call the fire department to ask them to make sure that I was up by 8:45.
Were you?
Barely. Not necessarily, Eddie, as the kids say, in my wheelhouse to be up before like 11. And so that's why I am very impressed and pleased that Don Fischer is able to make time for us this morning, because it is 9:30 for him on the West Coast. Indiana winning in Washington on Friday night, and they will be taking on the Ducks of Oregon in Eugene. That's right, tomorrow night. And Don Fischer joins us now on the guest line. Don, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jake. I was up at 5 this morning. I had 5 radio shows to do this morning, so it's not like it's an off day for me, if you know what I mean.
Man, I'll tell you what. Now, see, I will say, when like for IndyCar, when we do West Coast trips, the first day or two, it's not so hard because your body's on Eastern time. So you can convince your brain that you're up at 8 and not 5. But you've been out there now for a couple of days, so I would think by now your body is on. So that's impressive. Is on West Coast time.
Well, the only problem I have with the Jake is I woke up yesterday morning with a cold, and that's the first time I've had a cold this winter, and I've knocked on wood every time I've said that, and unfortunately this time it didn't work.
It's because you were up at 5, Don. You need your rest.
It was yesterday. It was yesterday that I got the cold.
Okay.
So.
Well, we hope you feel, and I'm glad you're working through it. Let's begin with and actually I was going to ask this, and I'm curious of this. When these teams do, the West Coast trip now, obviously you're staying out there. So did Indiana stay late in the Seattle area and then will sometime today make their way down to Eugene, or did you already make the trip from Washington to Oregon?
We made the trip yesterday afternoon at about 3 o'clock. So we flew down here yesterday, got here last evening. Everybody got settled in, and I didn't sleep all night long.
You were hacking and wheezing, but I hope you feel better, Don. Yeah. Okay, let's begin with this.
It's not that bad.
I thought Indiana, and obviously I'm going to state the obvious here. This is what you want at this point of year, and that is that Malik Renew, you're at the time of year now where you go back to your bread and butter. And I think that we've known with Indiana obviously having some very good players that one of their bread and butter players is Malik Renew. Now, is there a concerted effort that they've been able to focus on him and get him going now coming off the injury, or is it strictly the matter of he is healthier now and this is what we're seeing for it?
Well, I think he's definitely healthier. I mean, the knee has not been as big a problem here in the last couple of weeks as it was earlier. And obviously he's played some, but he got sick. I mean, it was some kind of a aberration of I assume he ate something, and he had swelling and all kinds of stuff. He had all the flu symptoms and those kinds of things on top of that. And they took him to the hospital before the Penn State game because he was that sick. And obviously he didn't play in that contest. But he's come back here in the last couple of days. He's looked like the old Malik, and obviously he played that way against Washington the other night.
Indiana also, Don, obviously of late has really kind of tightened their rotation. And a lot of teams do this later in the year. Has that been – obviously it's been to benefit because they play better, but how have you seen any sort of change just in terms of their scheme or the way that they play in a half court with a tighter rotation and, not going as deep with guys coming in, if that makes sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, it does, but because there's no question that they have really scaled down the rotation. There's no doubt about that. In fact, the last 3 ball games now, I think maybe 4, they have played 7 or 8 guys max. And once in a while, Caden Carlisle's been coming in as like the 3rd guy off the bench here in the last couple of ball games, and he's actually contributed a little bit, which is a good thing because he has really struggled shooting the basketball this year. But aside from that, the biggest change to me has been the fact that he has started all 3 Indiana players, guys from Hoosier State, in the last 3 ball games or so. He has started Anthony Leal, Trey Galloway, and Luke Goody. And Luke Goody, of course, is an Indiana kid that went to Illinois for 3 years and then came over to Indiana. So, but all of these guys, if you think about it, and granted, this team has struggled this year throughout the season, but all 3 of these guys have some pride in this program. And without question, I think that is a big factor. Their leadership skills. Leo and Goody are probably the most vocal leaders on this basketball team. Galloway would be the third guy. He's kind of a more quiet type of leader, but still gives some insights to these other guys. And I think that has helped dramatically. And then they're rarely playing two bigs at the same time. They're basically not playing Umar Ballo or Malik Renew when the other's on the floor. I just think it's been more cohesive. The defense has been better because of that, I think. It's a smaller lineup, and they can go with two bigs if they have to. But I think they've been more successful when they've subbed in and out for each other in Malik and Umar, and I think that's paid dividends too. So there's a reason they've won 4 of the last 5 ball games, and I think those reasons are what I just entailed.
You know, one of the guys that's funny about that, Don Fischer's our guest, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers. When you talk about the kids from Indiana, and you know, people know Anthony Leal's story and his journey. Don, I think if somebody were to just look at the box score, this is such a cliche. If you were just look at the box score, you'd say, yeah, okay, I mean, the guy was out there for 30-plus minutes and hardly took a shot. Is he the most underappreciated defensive player that we've seen in a while? I'm not saying that he's necessarily Chris Reynolds here, but I do think that he has a very unique knack and ability to understand cutting off lanes and just interrupting things defensively. Do you see that?
No, there's no doubt. I mean, that's his strength right now. I mean, Anthony was a really good high school basketball player, obviously Mr. Basketball in the state when he was recruited to Indiana. But he's an Indiana kid. He didn't get a lot of playing time in his first 4 years here. All of a sudden, they've started to use him, and he's taken advantage of the opportunity because he just plays so hard, and he gives everything that he's got when he's out there on the floor. And, again, he doesn't light up the stat sheet. Rarely gets more than maybe 5, 6, 7 points in a ball game, but he does other things, and it's called defensive play, and it's disrupting the other team. And he has done a great job of that. And I think it's helped these other players understand the importance of defense as well, and guys are just playing harder than they were earlier. So whatever has transpired here in regard to Anthony's playing time, obviously Mike Woodson has seen that he needs somebody with that kind of acumen. Obviously, he's done a great job with it, and he started, I think, now 11 or 12 ball games in a row. And that tells you that they trust him, and they put him out there for almost every ball game for about 35 to 38 minutes.
Don, this is fascinating because Indiana right now, and I do think, you know, I oftentimes when it comes to mock drafts and you know, all those things, I roll my eyes a lot, right? Because who really knows the way things are going to pan out? But the bracketology stuff usually is pretty dialed in. I mean, I think Joe Lunardi and those guys have a really good idea of just the statistics and the numbers of it all. And right now, Indiana, it looks like, would be one of the last in. Ohio State is one of those that's, battling with them. So it almost feels like Indiana in their regular season finale could be playing a play-in game, if you will. Do you think they're in right now? And if they were to not get Oregon, do you think they would still be in by beating Ohio State?
I think there's a good chance of it, but I'm not one of those guys who prognosticates or gives you my opinion as to whether they're going to win ball games or not.
Well, do you think they discuss that? I mean, you're around. Like, do you think that that's the kind of thing? There's maybe a danger from a team standpoint in getting too caught up in it. How do you think they navigate it?
You mean the coaching staff?
Yes.
With the players?
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming that they know exactly where they stand. There's no doubt about that. I mean, these guys know that they're playing for an NCAA tournament berth. That's what the goal was going into the season. And I'm sure since the resignation of Coach Woodson at the end of the year, these guys have all bought into the idea, let's do something special for this coach. And I think that's all played into their mentality right now. But I'm always a guy that says, don't get ahead of yourself. There's only, and I know it's coach speak and all that kind of stuff, but it's one game at a time. And if you don't take it that way, I don't think you have much of a chance to complete what you're trying to do because you're looking ahead, and you can't look ahead. And right now, the only thing that these guys should be thinking about is Oregon State, or of Oregon, I should say. And Oregon is a really good basketball team. I mean, they've had 14 straight years under the 15-year coach Dana Altman here at Oregon, and they've had 20-plus win seasons 14 times, including this year. They've already got 21. So this is a basketball team that knows how to win. They're veteran. They've got some really good players in this team. Their two guards are really good. A kid that comes off the bench, Bartholomew, he had 20 points the other night against USC. The other guard, Shellstad, also had a big night with 19. So, and they've got a big in the middle, Nate Biddle, who was the Big Ten Player of the Week last week. So this is a good basketball team, and they're really well coached. And Indiana's going to have their hands full, especially playing them out here in their home floor. And I'm concerned about the game simply because I think, it's going to be a down-to-the-wire contest, and Indiana's got to find a way to win it. And lately, they've been able to do that, and that's something else that they struggled with earlier this season.
Now, Don, in conclusion, I feel as somebody who is grateful for your appearances on this show, I feel that it's my duty to let you know of this. I hope that the cold is nothing more than what it is right now, and it doesn't, you don't get sinus congestion or anything like that. But if, in fact, you do start to feel a little under the weather while you're out there, be very careful at the different pharmacies in the state of Oregon. They got some different stuff out there. They got a wide array of the pharmacies. Just be very careful. Do your homework before you go in to get any vitamin C. That is my that is my assignment for you, Don. I'm telling you, okay?
Well, trust me, if it's not a CVS or a Walgreens, I won't go into it anyway.
Believe me, there's plenty of greens when it comes to the pharmacies out there, Don. I just want to make sure that, you know what I mean, that we're all on the up and up, all right? We ain't in Bloomington, okay?
Well, here's the thing. I'll ask around and see who can kick a cold.
That's right. And that's where you go, right? All right, so Hoosiers tomorrow night taking on Oregon. It is a 9 o'clock tip, correct, Eddie, over on our sister station, WIBC. And Don Fischer will be on the call and then back home for Indiana to close things out regular season-wise against Ohio State before the postseason games. Don, hope you feel better and certainly appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
All right, Don Fischer joining us on the always busy and available for your company or individual to sponsor guest line. Speaking of frequenting different establishments or businesses, I did something this weekend in Indianapolis that I have set out to do for my entire life. Today is my half birthday, meaning that I am 52 and 1/2 years old.
Congratulations.
Thank
How do you
you.
feel?
I feel a half a year older than I did yesterday. But at 52 and 1/2 years old, that means that I am almost exactly 1/2 the age of a place that I went into for the very, very first time on Saturday. And all I could think to myself is, why did I never do this earlier? And then I got my answer. I'll tell you what it is. And Mike Chappell, by the way, joins us in just over 15. I grew up on the north side of Indianapolis, and for as long as I can remember, from the age that I could see out the window of my parents' car as we drove home from activities downtown, whether that would be Market Square Arena, whether it was going down to City Market, whether it was going down to John's Famous Stew, whether it was, any number of events that would have taken place in downtown Indianapolis. Hell, I remember going down as a kid with presumably thousands of other people and literally laying down a blanket on Capitol in one of the little, park areas and sitting for hours to watch the dome inflate. And it took, nobody thought about the fact that it was going to take 4 hours for the dome, for the Teflon, just to be able to rise to the point of being visible over the stadium line. Then once it did, everybody cheered, and then it was like, oh, wait a minute, it's going to take another 4 hours for it to inflate totally. And then, of course, we had no idea when it was actually done. Like, okay, I think it looks done. We can go home now. But when my parents, and we used to always do this Linder's double dip for a dime time. We'd get 2 scoops of ice cream and drive around Indy, and my parents would tell me about different areas of Indianapolis because they had grown up here. The number one thing that I remember from those days all the way to now, every single time I drove from downtown Indianapolis, almost like a landmark, Stout's shoes is awesome. I love Stout's shoes because of Ripley the Parrot and, of course, the magic of the baskets where they slide the shoes back and forth. Those baskets are flying overhead. Stout's shoes on Mass Ave, awesome. Awesome. Like every city needs a store like that. One of those places, as I was riding in the car and now as an adult driving past it, I always said to myself for years, one of my goals in life is I'm going to buy a suit from Leon's Tailoring. Because Leon's Tailoring is an Indianapolis establishment. Leon's Tailoring that's been there for, I think, 119 years, 120. I was thinking 105. It's more than that. I think it's 120. And you want to talk about just an iconic institution of Indianapolis, because that sign, seeing that red brick building every single time of my entire life and an entire lifetime before mine for people that drove up Delaware, and there it is, Leon's Tailoring. And I just thought to myself, if I'm from Indianapolis and I've grown up forever seeing it, when I'm an adult, I had literally, when I was a younger person, 2 things that were like goals of mine. When I'm an adult, I'm going to buy myself this. One of them was a wristwatch that I have, but the other one was a suit from Leon's Tailoring, and I never made it in there. No reason, no excuse. But this weekend, Saturday, was the final day in business for Leon's Tailoring. Not because of going out of business from a business standpoint, because it is fabulous. The suits are beautiful. The upper echelon of the upper echelon buy their suits there. They're custom made. The fabric is incredible. The tailorship is incredible. The gentleman that owns it within the family-owned business is a high school classmate at Shortridge of my mom's. I mean, there's a million reasons why I should have gone in. But knowing that they were closing, I said, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to go into Leon's and get a suit or a sport coat, just anything that said Leon's Tailoring. And I went in, and yes, I didn't have time to get a custom suit made because they're closing. It was their last weekend. But they have also sport coats on the rack. And so I found one, and I tried it on, Eddie, and I got to tell you, it looked, and I mean, this is true of probably anything that I'm going to put on, but I mean, it looked like $1 million, man. I put it on, and I thought, now that is a good-looking, that is a handsome fellow looking in the mirror.
Did you turn yourself on looking in the mirror?
Well, that's a given. So I looked at it, and I thought, this thing, it fits perfectly. It looks great. Why have I never been in here before? And he's standing there, and he says, well, you're never going to get this price again. And I said, yeah, and I realize I'm never going to get this chance again because they're closing. And I was like, you know what? This is awesome. And it says Leon's Tailoring Indianapolis in it. I was so fired up. And it was on sale. Sport coat only. Now, the one thing I will say is I don't have a lot of occasion to wear sport coats anymore, truth be told. I have from when I worked in television. I have several suits, and I mean, I have a closet full of suits, to be honest with you. I need a sport coat like literally, I mean, an Amish guy needs an electrician. I mean, I don't really need one, but I wanted to have it. So I finally thought, you know what? Maybe I will do this. Maybe I'm going to take the plunge. Do you want to guess the price, Eddie?
Just the sport coat?
Just the sport coat.
On sale.
This is the sale price.
I don't know.
I'm going to write it down here so people know that I'm not fudging you. Go ahead. Price is Right rules. Show's over at 3.
$250? Whoa.
$895. And I thought, well, okay.
See, I've never been into Leon, so I don't know what the price
listen,
is.
and it's worth it. I mean, it is the finest of fine. It reminded me of when I was in Florence, Italy, and went into a shoemaker and saw the way that they were making custom Italian shoes. I mean, literally, it is the finest of the fine. That is admittedly a little rich for my blood. So, decided that I would get a hat.
If it was a watch, would you have said yes?
Oh, yeah, easily. But a little rich for my blood, right? So I decided maybe I would then go with like a British hat or a Stetson. They didn't have any in my size. I can only imagine for you, right?
Wow.
Yours would have been $895 just based on the fabric alone. But I did end up with, I have always wanted, almost like a Charles Dickens era-esque winter coat, like a short winter coat that's like a tweed coat. And they had one there. It was on sale. It was way less than $895. It was far more affordable. On the inside of it, it says Leon's Tailoring, Indianapolis, Indiana. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. This will last me forever. And I am sad that I never previously went in. I'm sad that a place like that is an Indianapolis institution has closed its doors. But I'm absolutely thrilled. I'm absolutely honored to have a piece of clothing that came from Leon's. And better late than never, I guess. Better late than never. They were wonderful in there, and certainly wish all of the folks there the best in their retirement and enjoying the fruits of their labor over 120 years of making men and women in this city look their absolute finest. I'm thrilled to have the coat. Mike Chappell joins us in just a couple. 1 o'clock hour is underway in Indianapolis. For that matter, the 1 o'clock hour is underway everywhere in the Eastern time zone. Joining us now on the always busy and available to be sponsored, by the way, guest line, our friend Mike Chappell from CBS 4 and WXIN Fox 59. Chap, I was just telling the story of going into Leon's Tailoring and getting a coat because they have closed after 120 years of making clothing for men and women, primarily men, in Indianapolis. What is the most, Chap, if you don't mind me being this personal, what's the most you have ever spent on a sport coat?
Oh, wow. Not a ton. I couldn't give you a price. I'd probably tell you the most expensive one I'll ever wear, if my wife has anything to say about it, will be when I die and I'll be laying in a coffin. Although you could argue that should be the cheapest one because you're taking it with you.
That's right.
I own a couple. I look at the way the real journalists nowadays are. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to embarrass them, but they dress the way you're supposed to dress. You know, pocket squares, and I don't. I'm old school, and that'll be my fault till I die. But no, I'm not a big clothes horse at all. You see me out at the Colts complex, I'm shorts and a T-shirt or a pullover, and I wear shorts whether it's 70 or 17 outside. So I'm not a clothes horse at all. Never will be. Have never been. So
well, it's funny because part of like when an old shop like that, and it's an institution, right, in Indianapolis. I mean, in every store, I used to love, Chap, when we would go on the road. For whether I was covering Colts games or, for fun or, whatever. Anytime I would go to a city, I always loved trying to find in the downtown area the local long-standing hat store and then the local long-standing cigar store. There's always both of them are just old school feel, right? And yet they are becoming, sadly, more and more a thing of the past. In the case of a tailor like that, you just don't see people wearing the suits like you did for years, right? I mean, it's just a sad reality, right?
Well, you look at like sidelines of NBA and NFL games. That's changed quite a bit.
Totally.
Now with the Belichick and his hoodies, it's a far cry from Tom Landry with his
now,
spiffy suit and hat on.
Have you ever heard, Chap, and I'm fairly certain this is totally correct. I mean, I don't think this is urban legend. Do you know the origin of the hoodie with Belichick?
No, did he forget to pack his clothes and that's just what was available or what? I don't know.
Close. So Belichick, do you remember the year, Chap, Mike Chappell, our guest, who's covered the NFL since the Colts got here, and it was, so you remember the Tom Landry era, right? And
sure.
When a couple of years ago, and I'm trying to think of the two coaches, there were two. I think Jack Del Rio was one. And was there a Mike Nolan that coached for the Niners?
Briscoe, yeah.
So those two guys wanted to wear, they petitioned or they, whatever, to the league to be able to wear a coat and tie and suit on the sidelines because the NFL had struck a merchandising deal with Reebok.
Oh, yeah.
And so they asked for permission and were told that the only way that they could do it is if they wore a Reebok-made suit. And allegedly, Belichick thought that was so absurd that he gave a Reebok catalog to his administrative assistant and said, pick the thing on here that is approved that looks the most absurd and least professional.
I believe that. I could know whether that's true or not, but I would believe that.
There you have the hoodie, right? Okay, Combine is complete for another year, at least in terms of the major hub and the big stars and everything else. Biggest takeaway for you is what?
Just Chris Ballard doubling down, or whatever you're going to say about the open competition at quarterback. He talked about that, and people forget he talked about that in January at the end of the season. Although he was more expansive on it, and I think everything else, and I'll talk about this ad nauseum, but everything else they do pales in comparison to whether Richardson is the right guy. If it's not, then they're just swimming upstream, and it's the rapids, and it's not going to matter. And again, what we're going to see in the next 10 days, because free agency starts next Tuesday or next Wednesday, sort of next Monday when they can negotiate, but next Wednesday when you can sign guys, is what's the level of open competition, and that'll manifest itself into who it is. You know, it can't be a third or fourth round draft pick. It just can't be. It's got to be a guy who's got some chops, and what that is, I don't know, because it's just not a great year for free agent quarterbacks. First of all, you don't know who's out there. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, you don't know what Pittsburgh's doing. Sam Darnold, you don't know what Minnesota's doing. Daniel Jones, you don't know what Minnesota's doing. So you don't know what's out there. But I don't care who they bring in. If Richardson's not the guy, I just don't know how this works going forward for a lot of people, including Richardson. So the fact that they're so adamant, as they should be, that there is some level of concern in the building that Richardson is the guy, and part of that's the fact he can't stay healthy. He's missed half his starts with injury. But by now, a team needs to know what they've got. After 2 years, you need to know, and these guys don't. For a lot of reasons. So, you know, I'm really curious who they bring in, because there's got to be a guy that if Richardson gets hurt again, that this guy can step up and win you games like Minshew did 2 years ago. You know, and it needs to be somebody better than Minshew type, because if it's not Richardson, who you got going forward? I mean, ideally, it'd be some guy that beats that Richardson, and then, oh, by the way, he could be somebody moving forward. If Richardson loses the open competition, then what do you do with him? You can't keep him around as a backup. You just can't going forward. So much of what everyone is invested in time-wise and career-wise, it hinges on Richardson making that kind of jump between year 2 and year 3 that everyone needed him to make between year 1 and year 2. I hope he does, because I just know that the alternative is not very attractive in a lot of areas.
Okay, a couple of things here, chap. First, one of the names that came up over the weekend, Jacoby Brissett. Would Jacoby Brissett come back? Would they have interest in him?
Oh, would he come back? I mean, you're a player looking for a seat. So, of course, you come back. I mean, of course you come back. Now, and I've mentioned Brissett. He was like, when we did our podcast last week or a week before, I mentioned Brissett as like my third choice. And what he would represent is such a low ceiling. I mean, they would have made the playoffs in 2019 had he not gotten hurt and had Adam Vinatieri not had his worst career of playing for a quarter of a century. But now it would be and the expectations from the fan base, if that matters, and it can't matter. It can't matter what the fan base says if you're the Colts, would be so, you know, really? Jacoby Brissett, really? But I think he would bring a low ceiling, and is he 8, 9, 9, and 8 if people around him play okay? Not play okay, play at a high level, probably. But that's all, nothing more. So, yes, he would come back, because if you're a player, you want to play. And there may not be a lot of seats out there when the music stops for some of these guys.
One of the things, Mike, that we talked about, and I talked about at the Combine, I want you to give me your opinion on this. If the Colts want to say, look, this is an open competition, Anthony Richardson's going to be a part of that competition, and so we're willing to bring in a vet, Daniel Jones, Justin Fields, whoever. And
right.
Let's say it's going to be via free agency. If you trade for somebody, it's different. That guy's got no choice. But realistically speaking, can the Colts in good faith look at the agent or into the eyes of a veteran free agent and convince that player that they have a legitimate chance to start against a guy that they selected in the top 5 within the last 36 months? It's
a great question, and I think what would be is in the conversation, the Colts would absolutely mean it, because I think their uncertainty in Richardson is at that level. But if I'm the agent, I would have a hard time believing it just for what you said. So it's coming from two different directions, and the Colts have got to treat this as an open competition. They have to. And not that it's going to weigh into their evaluation, but we're going to watch these guys practice in OTAs. We're going to see them in training camp. We're going to see them in preseason games. Forget about holding Richardson out of preseason games if this is a competition. They've got to play with the lights on. And people are going to see. It's the eye test. Yes, the team will look at different things and all this. The eye test, a lot of times, I don't need to see a movie. Someone will tell me it's a good or bad movie. If I see it, I know I like it. So I think we'll see how the competition's going. But if I'm the agent with Daniel Jones or whomever, now money will convince anybody to go anywhere if it's the right level. So if you offer Daniel Jones, more than anybody else is offering, he'll come here and and then if it's a skewed open competition, he deals with it because he's got X millions of dollars guaranteed. But it would be hard if I'm an agent, for all the reasons you mentioned, 4th overall pick and all this, that it's not going to. It would have to be almost a TKO. You'd have to knock out the champion, and if it's close, it's going to go to the incumbent. And I think the team would have to really sell that guy, the agent, on that. But at the same time, and again, what plays into this is other teams are going to want these guys as well. As mediocre or modest as this group of, Jameis Winston, do any of these guys really move the needle? Well, Winston would, because you'd get 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions every other week. But I just wonder how much of a market there's going to be when it's all said and done for these guys. Will there be a good market? Sam Darnold, is there a market for him at 40 or 50 million? Not 50. I mean, you're going to pay $50 million for Sam Darnold? I wouldn't. So, but it's a very good point. But the bottom line is there has to be open competition, because we can see it. Not that matters, but more importantly, the players in the locker room can see it. They know who deserves to be out there and who doesn't. And I hope, like heck, that Richardson earns it. And then if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. Then you're screwed for that reason, not because he's 47% completion percentage. But it's got to be open. And the guy they bring in, all those names we've talked about, has got to be legit, and it's got to be open. And that's why it's going to be so interesting. Hey, they need a tight end. Tyler Warren was pretty impressive at the combine and at Penn State, and Malachi Starks and all these guys. But if you don't get the quarterback, I mean, what are you doing?
Chap, here's the thing.
Not going to matter.
I asked this to Kevin last week, so let me run this past you. If they feel, so the tight end, for example, let's say, Warren's obviously very impressive. But if they feel like there is a smaller drop-off from tight end 1 to a second-round tight end, then there is corner or defensive back in general, whether it be safety or corner. If there's a bigger drop-off from round 1 to round 2 in defensive back, could they go that area and go with the safety of the strength of tight end in round 2?
I suppose. I see what you're saying. All I would counter that by saying is you've got to give Richardson all of the help you can. And I would not want to pass on a really good tight end. I'm not saying they passed on Brock Bowers last year at all. They weren't in position to get him. They weren't moving up to number 5 or whatever it was to get Brock Bowers. They weren't. They just weren't. I would hate to pass on a really good player, a top-end player to get I'd hate to pass on a top-end player to get a really good player. The further back you go, you're going to get less of a player. But no, what you're saying is, like Starks. If Starks is there at 14, the safety, and this is a defense that really features the safety, do you take him? I was talking to Stephen Holder, and he said it was one of the best interviews of the media sessions that we had, and his resume is solid. So I would still take the tight end because you've got to give Richardson every reason, and I'd rather that be with the top tight end instead of, if you go to the second round, the third tight end or the fourth tight end. And it is a deep tight end class, definitely. The kid from Michigan is pretty good. Loveland is really good. Now he's first round. So I would. That's why last year it's funny. I was talking with Matt Taylor about this, and what happens last year at 15 if Latu's there, obviously, and Brock Bowers is there. Which one do you take? Forget that Bowers had the all-time rookie tight end season. Try to forget that 100 and some catches and 1,200 yards and all that. But I'd have a hard time from roster building taking a tight end. Let's say Dallas. I'd have a hard time taking Dallas Clark at the time over a Dwight Freeney, forgetting what they did in their career, forgetting that Freeney's a Hall of Famer. But boy, the premium position of an edge rusher to me is just so much more important than a tight end. But in this situation, needing to get your quarterback as much as you can, and knowing that tight end room is just bereft of difference-making talent, I would probably opt for the tight end this year, even though there might be a corner that you have graded better, or a safety that you got graded better, or a defensive lineman. I'm not saying it's win or else this year, although it might well be. I want to give my quarterback every chance to succeed, and if it doesn't work, then you say, well, it wasn't meant to be, as opposed to say, well, we got a pretty good safety for the next coach, but the tight end we got in the second round wasn't able to do enough. In this instance, I'd take the tight end and hope he could have that, not Brock Bowers type of season impact, but 50, 60, 70 catches and the key third down catches and all that this has been sorely missing since Jack Doyle left.
By the way, Chap, name for me a movie that everybody else told you was great that it wasn't of your palate.
Oh, good question. Boy, you throw these at me and I've got nothing. And in an hour later, I'm going to have a great response. I got nothing for you off the top of my head. And that's a great question.
Or a movie. The other way would be a movie that you loved, and like seemingly nobody else did. And you're like, this movie's great. Why does nobody? How did this not win an Oscar? I'll give you one.
What's that? Go ahead.
You ever seen Grand Canyon?
Something for me.
Late '80s. I mean, an old movie. You ever seen Grand Canyon?
Okay. Oh, the Danny Glover.
Correct. Loved it.
I saw it and it didn't move my needle much.
Okay. Pulp Fiction. I thought it sucked.
Ask me that next week and I'll have a better answer for you. We watched. We rented with the granddaughter the other day. It was Mufasa.
I've not seen it.
Movie. It's all right. It's a little confusing for me, which is probably because I'm old. But everybody else, I never saw Wicked. I think my granddaughter's seen it a couple times, and I have no desire to see it.
Okay, Avatar. Avatar sucked. Avatar was nothing. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I didn't like it.
Yeah, it's Dances with Wolves in Space with blue people. That's it.
Yeah, Dances with Wolves. I didn't care for that. I never saw Waterworld, which was apparently one of the worst movies ever made.
Correct. That and Ishtar, like the two biggest flops ever, right?
Reservoir Dogs. That should have won an Oscar.
Okay, Reservoir. Here's the thing. I loved Reservoir Dogs, and that's why I didn't like Pulp Fiction, because when I was watching Pulp Fiction, the out of sequence thing, I'm like, yeah, this is Reservoir Dogs. It's the same thing. That was his first one, right? And I like some of his stuff. Don't get me wrong, but that one, like, I liked Django. I liked what's the one?
What was the vampire movie?
I'm out on any vampire movie. I'm out.
The one with Clooney and Tarantino and gosh, what the hell was it? Selma Hayek.
Oh, wait a minute. Now hold on. Selma Hayek, you said?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I got news for you. Selma Hayek could read the phone book. I'm in.
Well, she's dancing with a snake. She's a stripper and she's dancing with a snake. I'm telling you.
Dusk Till Dawn.
That's it. What a great movie. Now then they made like
I would watch Selma Hayek dance from dusk till dawn. So that is appropriately named.
see, it's funny. When I was at the Star, they had us do these. They put these little promo ads on with our picture and what our interests were. And like my favorite author is Stephen King because he's demented and I like his stuff. But my favorite movies were Animal House and Caddyshack. And she said, "You put out there for people to see that you like." I said, "Yeah, because
of course.
they're great movies."
By the way,
So,
I'll leave you with this, chap. I'll leave you with this. Are you ready? Do we
Sure.
have the tinfoil hat, Eddie, by chance? It has come to my understanding, Mike Chappell, that there are those, and I'm not saying that it's a lot of people, but it can only be 100, and that still represents 25% of the population. It's my understanding that there are those living in the state of Maine that have an odd conspiracy theory that Stephen King may actually be a serial killer, because apparently many of the stories that he has written, it has been rumored, have linked to or describe crimes that have taken place in the state of Maine that the Maine State Police have said no one would know about unless they were involved.
Oh, wow.
There you go. There's my theory for you for Mike Chappell. Although he did write
I
the
do not
body,
have
which
a tinfoil hat on.
that's right.
I've got a collection of most of his hardbacks. My wife got me the latest one for my birthday, so I just think he's a demented genius. I don't think he's a serial killer.
You might be getting a call from the authorities, is all I'm saying. All right, Chap, we'll talk to you next week, all right?
Be well, guys.
All right, Mike Chappell joining us on the guest line. Did you know that about Stephen King, Eddie?
No, I did not.
That has always been the rumor, apparently, in the state of Maine about Stephen King. I'm not saying I believe it. I think, personally, Stephen King's greatest work may well be The Body, the short story that became Stand By Me. Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. By the way, Alex Golden going to join us at 2 o'clock, but there's plenty to talk about with the Pacers, including a roster move today that you might think is peculiar, but it also might be signs that things are going well. I'll let you know what I'm talking about next. So I mentioned after yesterday's Pacer game, a couple of observations from that game. Pacers in action tomorrow night taking on the Houston Rockets. Houston is in action tonight in Oklahoma City.
You know what that means, Jake? You know what tomorrow is for Houston?
That would be the second night of a back-to-back.
A Sega Baba.
By the way, speaking of that, and travel for teams, I can't believe I didn't get into this when I was discussing yesterday's game.
Are you talking about the Sirs?
The Pacers, correct. I thought the game itself, as I mentioned off the top of the show, Tyrese Haliburton was back to Tyrese Haliburton ways. Everything kind of dictated through Tyrese Haliburton. Now, it was fabulous, and what I love Aaron Nesmith, because I love a guy that can get you 20-plus, as he did last night. He had 26 or 27. It was a career high for Aaron Nesmith. But very, very, very few of those points are designed for Aaron Nesmith. To be able to have a guy that you rotate through and then he can hit an open shot. He had a couple of big threes. Some of his scoring was kind of silent. Like you didn't realize it. Then you look up and you're like, oh, gosh, he's got 17 or whatnot.
He had a huge third quarter.
Yeah, Kobe White for the Bulls, for example, had a huge first quarter. And you could tell, he hit like 3 straight threes at one point, and you're going, man, this guy's on fire. And he had 22, I think, maybe 20 or 22 in the first quarter, and then ended up with 24 at midpoint in the third. He still had 24 or 26. But Nesmith was so big in that quarter, and yet it just is because Haliburton was finding him, guys were finding him, but he didn't have to design for things to go through him, and that's what I love about Nesmith. He's happy and willing to do whatever he needs to do. And guys like that are so incredibly important. But Haliburton not only was facilitating that just in his ability to get everybody open, particularly from behind the three-point line, but also he got in the head and the ears of Josh Giddey for Chicago, and that changed everything, literally, because all of a sudden then Chicago's offense became stagnant because you had these two that were trying to one-up one another, but Haliburton was doing his side of the one-up by getting everybody else involved, and Giddey was not. And that was where the Pacers really kind of pulled away.
He just couldn't giddy up.
Okay. That's actually not bad.
Thanks.
It's not bad, yeah.
Thank you.
After the game, Rick Carlisle had talked about the fact that Jarace Walker is going to the Mad Ants on assignment, along with Johnny Furphy. And I want to make very clear on this. There are not a lot of things of which I'm very smart. Like Forrest Gump is not a smart man, but he knows what love is, right? I'm not a smart man, but I know this much. The Pacers are believers in Jarace Walker. And that sounds ridiculous because you would say, well, then, Jake, then why are they not playing him more? This is why. The fact that they're having him play for the Mad Ants, it is strictly rotation and minutes that right now are limiting Jarace Walker because he has shown the flashes where they believe that he is there, or that he has it within him, but he's not totally ready and there yet. And so the best thing to happen to the Pacers at the beginning of the year in terms of the injury to Nesmith, the injury to Nembhard, Shepard being out at times, they had to rotate guys through, and that allowed Walker and Johnny Furphy to get minutes, and it gave the Pacers front office and coaching staff a chance to truly assess those guys in NBA minutes. And in doing so, they established the following two things. I think they established that Jarace Walker, the game has indeed slowed down for him finally, and that now it's just strictly a matter of him figuring out what play he is most comfortable with. In other words, which role he's most comfortable with. Because he's no longer overthinking it and things are becoming a little more instinctive, and he is a little more comfortable shooting from outside, for example, and he can do a lot of different things. They are highly impressed with his athleticism and are believers in him. And if they weren't, if they had turned the page, if they'd thrown in the towel on him, when he falls out of rotation, he just falls out of rotation. But they're saying, no. We want to make sure that what we've built up to this point, we're continuing by just getting him reps, getting him minutes. Thus why he is with the Mad Ants. Johnny Furphy also, and we know that Furphy is obviously very young, 1 year out of Kansas, got into games based on necessity at the beginning of the year, and the coaching staff really likes his potential to guard on the wing, and B, his overall feel for the game. So I think he also is somebody that is going to – Furphy is probably a year to two behind Walker in terms of when he really does get into rotation. And Walker was in rotation and then falls out. So instead of letting dust settle there, they want to maintain what they're going because they believe in him. Now, he's playing right now with the Mad Ants and doing okay, right, Eddie?
Yes. Tony East over at Gamebridge covering the game said Jarace had, let me find it again. In the first half, Walker had 16 points, 18 rebounds, 5 assists.
18 rebounds?
8 rebounds, sorry. 16 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 steals, and he's 6 of 8 from the field.
Yeah, it's pretty solid, right?
Yeah. And said that Aaron Neesmith, Thomas Bryant, James Johnson, Gennaro Pargo, other members of the coaching staff, Pascal Siakam, Chad Buchanan, all present for the game today.
Yeah. So that's where things stand with that. Now, in terms of football, we actually have, Eddie, if you could please, the breaking news sounder. One of the most familiar names in football that ties in with one of the most familiar stories that I tell about football and the Combine has announced the end of an era. And you might think that I'm talking about, say, for example, that Bill Belichick has decided that he's not going to go coach at the University of North Carolina. That would be a fair, maybe, assessment or statement. You might think that I'm talking about the fact that, you know, somebody who's been coaching a long time, that Mike Tomlin just decided, you know what, with the Steelers, I've never gone sub 500 and I'm not going to start now. We're still looking at the quarterbacking position. I'm going to walk away. That would be a fair assessment. But it's somebody that I would list as a kind of a blue blood within football, and somebody that has been a major contributor to the game for a very, very long time. And I would say household name for the game, but deciding to walk away from it, and we're going to see a lot less of him. I'll tell you who it is and how it ties into a couple of classic tales next. You know, it's not often that somebody is able to extend their career or go into even like a second life of career by getting into a role that then some people don't even realize the level of accomplishment they had in the original role that put them there. For example, Dick Vitale is a good example of this. I think a lot of people probably don't even realize Dick Vitale was a coach at one time. He wasn't an overly successful coach. He's obviously been a very successful broadcaster. Al McGuire comes to mind. When I was a kid, Al McGuire I knew as the colorful television personality. I did not realize that he had led Marquette to a national championship in 1977, etc. Hubie Brown is a good one. How many people know that Hubie Brown was a coach? And at some point, we're probably going to enter into the arena and it's going to take a long time, but I think most people know that, obviously, but young people today, how many high school kids today understand Troy Aikman's place as a quarterback? Because he's really good on television, and he's just a cool guy and, whatever else. One of those that falls into that category because I think he became really good on television and was a colorful personality. But announcing today, Eddie, you said just in the last couple of minutes this has been reported, correct?
That is correct. Is it worth the sounder?
Well, we did it already, right? Breaking news sounder. We can do it again. What the hell? Why
not? Jimmy Johnson, that is the former football coach, Jimmy Johnson, announced he will be retiring from Fox.
So he will no longer be on TV. Two things about Jimmy Johnson. Number one, that I noticed this year, and I had never noticed this before. There was it during maybe the NFC Championship? I don't think it was during the Super Bowl, but one of the games that I was watching, Jimmy Johnson was on a set with, and of course now they have 14 people on the pregame and postgame sets of these things, but Jimmy Johnson was up there with Michael Strahan, and I can't remember who the other one was, but I never realized how small he is.
Yes.
Did you notice it? I'm like, that guy's tiny.
I know.
What is Jimmy Johnson's height? I'm going to guess, well, he's probably 5'11", but because he was standing next to a bunch of 6'5" guys, he looked tiny. Does it say what his height is anywhere?
Let me find it. Okay, I've got it. What's your official prediction? You would be incorrect.
Over?
Yes, you are over.
5'10".
You are still over.
Okay, see, but he played football. He must have been was he a defensive back? Because he looked tiny. How big is he?
He is 5 feet 8 inches tall.
Yeah, he had to have been, because he played football at the University of Arkansas. But here's my favorite thing about Jimmy Johnson, who was and I thought did a really good job on television. Don't get me wrong.
He was the head coach of the Cowboys when Jerry Jones was in town and blew up a toilet and forgot to wash his hands and then tried to shake your hand after.
Correct. Well, I don't think Jimmy Johnson was coaching the Cowboys during the Jerry Jones Combine bathroom incident that I horrifically witnessed, where he wanted to shake hands with me and he did not wash his hands after, going to war in the bathroom.
By the way, did you ever see the Jerry Jones bus around town?
Yes, I saw it. We were leaving the Pacer game when the Pacers played, during the Combine. I can't remember which game it was, but yes, it pulled up on Delaware. So I did see the Jimmy Johnson bus.
Usually
the Jerry Jones bus.
Parked outside the Conrad, and I missed
Correct.
it this go around.
Okay, so Jimmy Johnson is from Port Arthur, Texas, which is the same hometown and same high school as former Pacer Steven Jackson. And I once was talking to Steven Jackson and said, oh, by the way, you're from Port Arthur. I know that town because I'm a musician from there. And Steven Jackson said, absolutely. And then he actually said, but she's dead. I said, yeah, no, I'm well aware. Yes, she is deceased and you would not have met her. That's correct. But
it gives me vibes of the Pete Rose,
That's
You're
right.
showing that photo. Oh, Billy here is dead. Let's just cross him out with the blue Sharpie. And, see, Tyler, he's
Indeed.
dead.
I have the 76 Big Red Machine poster with blue dots on every deceased player because Pete Rose, during his lifetime, put put a blue dot, as he was signing my poster, blue dotted every person who'd passed away. A little bit awkward. Jimmy Johnson went to high school in Port Arthur, Texas, with another very famous person. Before Jimmy Johnson left Port Arthur to go play football at the University of Arkansas, where he met Jerry Jones. Thus, the friendship and the relationship that began, where when Jerry Jones became the head coach, or the owner, of the Dallas Cowboys, he hired Jimmy Johnson as his head coach. During Jimmy Johnson's time in Port Arthur, Texas in high school, by his own admission, he was, I would say, a bully, for lack of a better phrase, but he was very sure of himself and he was the quintessential jock. The guy that thought that music kids were dorks or theater kids were dorks or whatever else, and made no bones about the fact that he was the big man on campus despite the fact that he was only 5'8". And Jimmy Johnson, while in high school in Port Arthur, Texas, had a high school classmate who was an aspiring artist and musician, and he really, really, really made fun of the person. That person went on to achieve fame earlier than did Jimmy Johnson, for that matter. And as a result, at their 10-year high school reunion, even though this person was young for her grade, she went on the Dick Cavett Show, which was a popular daytime television show back in the early 70s, and talked about how excited she was to go back to her high school reunion because she wanted to be able to finally. She talked about how they laughed her out of town, they ran her out of town, they mocked her out of town, and now she's going back for her high school reunion, and everybody claps in the crowd because they're like, oh, man, and she's the one that made it big. And Dick Cavett said, oh, you've got to take movies and let us see how it goes. And he said, what are you going to say to those folks? And she said, I'm not, I'm sorry. He said, what do you think they're going to say to you? That's what he said. And she said, they're not going to say anything because I've got some things I'm going to say. And they're going to listen, man. They're going to listen. And the crowd cheers and whatever else. And she went back to her high school reunion and was treated the exact same way that she had been treated in high school 10 years earlier. And it was a huge emotional scar for her, and one that she, by accounts of people close to her, never overcame. And she passed away at the age of 27. I've always found it fascinating that Jimmy Johnson collegiately is most linked to Jerry Jones, same initials, and Jimmy Johnson in high school is linked to same initials, Janis Joplin, who was his high school classmate, and I have a lot of respect for Jimmy Johnson, but I think it's interesting that when by his own admission, that he basically bullied her in high school, and he's kind of never really been remorseful about it. I mean, he's kind of like, yeah, well, I mean, it was in high school, it was a long time ago. But nonetheless, I've always found that fascinating, the connection, because of the fact that they all have the same initials. But that's, again, just how my brain works. I don't know. I think it's weird. JJ. Like Jeremiah Johnson. I was at the Pacer game last night. Jeremiah Johnson was there. Maybe Jeremiah Johnson likes Janis Joplin, or maybe he likes Jimmy Johnson, or maybe he likes Jerry Jones.
Did he call you Josh?
He did not call me Josh. However, at the Pacer game, I have a disappointment here from that game. It was Boomer's birthday.
I was wondering how long did we get into the show before you started mentioning all this.
It was Boomer's birthday yesterday, which meant usually that means a smorgasbord of mascots, right?
Yeah.
And usually you get, and Boomer's in the upper echelon. He's on the Mount Rushmore of NBA mascots.
For sure.
And Boomer's been doing it for a long time. It's the same Boomer. I'll just simply say it that way in case kids are listening. Usually you get Rocky. I think it was a year ago when Rocky was here from the Nuggets, and I mean, I was like, literally, I've been starstruck twice in my life. Once when I met Bo Jackson, the other time when I met Rocky.
Wrong. 3 times when you met the Duck.
Oh, yes. Good point.
Quack, quack.
The Duck from Oregon is pretty awesome. The Raptor is cool.
Sorry, 4 times when you walk into the studio and see my face every day.
Hardly. The Toronto Raptor is very cool. The Gorilla from Phoenix. I don't know that he's made it for the birthday party, but he's a big one, right? I realize NBA scheduling comes into play with this, but here's who we got yesterday. You had Freddie Fever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's cool. Whatever. I mean, he's local. He's easy, right? You had Little Freddie. Okay, same reaction. You had Baby Boomer. That's cool, right? And then here's who we got from the rest of the NBA.
Wait, no Blue?
Blue was not there.
Wow.
Nitro was not there. Nitro, very underrated.
Well, there was a Fuel game yesterday, I believe.
Nitro,
That's why.
very underrated. Nitro is awesome. Very underappreciated.
No Gapper?
Rowdy's cool.
Rowdy. Gapper's Cincinnati.
Rowdy's cool. Rowdy was also not there. Rowdy might have been at the Fuel game cheering on Nitro.
Oh, okay.
I don't know where Blue was. Probably body slamming kids on a flag football game somewhere. Or throwing Nerf balls into a trash can. You had Blaze.
Blaze.
Mm-hmm.
Who's Blaze?
Well, Blaze could easily be from the Nuggets. He could easily be from the Pistons. He could easily be – there are a lot of places Blaze could be. Blaze is from the Portland Trailblazers.
Oh, that was my next guest.
He wasn't bad. Blaze wasn't bad. I was fairly down with Blaze. He's a very poor man's Rocky. He was okay. Crunch, which is the Timberwolves mascot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really understand what Crunch means unless.
So Mark Boyle was explaining this last night with Eddie White during their crossover in their postgame show.
Do you have the origin of Crunch?
Yes.
Okay. Besides the candy bar, I want you to hold on to it and tell me next.
And do you think you'll have a lot to say to your old high school classmates?
I'm gonna laugh a lot, man.
Were you not surrounded by friends in high school?
They laughed me out of class, out of town, and out of the state. So I'm going home.
How do you know?
That was Janis Joplin talking with Dick Cavett. Again, Janis Joplin, high school classmates, Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson retiring today from Fox Sports. That announcement a little bit earlier. So last night at the game, as I'd mentioned, for Boomer's birthday, they had Blaze, which makes sense. That's the Blazers mascot. Then they had Crunch. Now, I'm sitting there and I'm watching Crunch, who's a Timberwolf. He was okay. I was like, okay, Crunch. Like, I would think Crunch would be a better name for the Pacific Northwest mascots because people out there are crunchy because they're all granolas. And I was trying to think of why Crunch is the name, and then I thought it's got to be – and you wouldn't know if you were not from Indiana. You wouldn't understand why the Pacers mascot is Boomer, but obviously it's for Boom Baby, right? I mean, that goes without saying. So what Mark Boyle, who is a native of Minnesota, God's country as he refers to it, probably would have insight as to why the Timberwolves mascot is Crunch. And he said it was what, Eddie?
So back in the day, the Wolves had a logo, and they called it the Crunch logo, and Nestle was a huge sponsor for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Therefore, the name Crunch.
Gotcha. Okay. I figured there had to have been a candy bar connection. I thought part of me wondered if it wasn't that like Wolves Crunch. I didn't know. And then the other one, and this one was where I was like, okay, this is the best we could do. Hugo the Hornet. First off, Hugo the Hornet, I don't even think – I think they just stopped at a store, didn't Party Plus or one of those – what's the party store that just went out of business?
Party City?
Party City. I think they just went to Party City. They got some teal tights, put on some high tops, and then just got some purple-looking bee outfit. And they're like, okay, just call it Hugo. I mean, the Hornets alone – oh, Pierre was there too, Pierre the Pelican. He was okay. But doesn't it feel – when you got Pierre and Hugo – I felt kind of bad for Crunch and Blaze because they're kind of cool. But
you know what's bothersome? Benny the Bull wasn't there, and
Correct.
they're playing the Bulls.
Right. I mean, maybe that's why, right? You don't want the mascot of the other team there, I guess.
I don't know. But you're celebrating Boomer.
Yeah, I know, but
in his birthday.
Yeah, I was a little bit. Hugo just seemed to bring down the whole thing. I mean, I'm like, I don't know. I mean,
is it true that they had troubles in the dunk portion?
Yeah, Freddie Fever had some problems.
Okay.
Yes. And they also played musical chairs, and, of course, Boomer won. Hugo just, I don't know. It's like having it's like saying that you're going to have a music festival of all-star bands and all of a sudden, and then you bring out New Kids on the Block. And it's like, really? I don't know. It just seems to bring down the whole room. It's like a huge buzzkill. Alex Golden was probably there yesterday. Alex, did you notice that too, and did you have the same observation about Hugo?
Unfortunately, I was not there at the game last night.
If you had been there, would you have wanted your money back based on the fact that you got Hugo?
Yeah, probably so, based on everything you're describing. I mean, it sounds like a bit of a letdown there. I mean, I was there for Boomer's birthday last year. I don't remember Hugo the Hornet being there, and I remember it being a very enjoyable time. So
yeah, Rocky was there last year. Here's the thing. Yeah. Rocky was there. I mean, like you could have Rocky at, you name it, and Rocky shows up. It's a party. I mean, Rocky's, I love Boomer, right? But Rocky's pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, it's tough. I think the Buck was there too last year, which made it really great because he was getting booed the whole time.
So maybe they do bring in the opposition. You're right. Benny the Bull should have been there.
That was Buck, right, with a B. I didn't need to hit the dump button over here.
No, that is correct. Yes. Thank you for the conscientious effort there, Eddie.
Yeah.
Alex, Jarace Walker as well as Johnny Furphy in the G League. I think a lot of people would see that and be surprised by it. I had earlier said that to me this is actually a sign of the Pacers' continued belief in Walker. Furphy's so young, it's not a huge surprise, but Walker, I think they really believe in him, and I think that they feel like things have slowed down for him. It is literally strictly a matter of available minutes, and they're like, you know what? Now that it has slowed down for him, we've got to get him playing somewhere, and so therefore the designation. How do you believe that Jarace Walker handled that news?
Yeah, I mean, when they asked him about it, he said he would do it. I mean, I think that's a sign of maturity. I believe it was T.J. Leaf who was asked if he wanted to play in the G League back in the day before they ended up trading him, and he said no, he was good. So he was okay with sitting on the bench and not playing in the G League where he would get more developmental minutes. And look where T.J. Leaf's now. So I think it's a smart move by Jarace just to get some reps, because when you're at practice, you're in shoot around, like, yeah, you go through the stuff. But until you're getting actual game live reps, it's just totally different. And while he's been kind of inconsistently out of the rotation, more so now not in the rotation, it's just an opportunity for him to kind of get better and not get rusty. So I think by him saying he'll do it, it shows a sign of maturity that he's willing to try to put in the work and whatever it takes. And he's got the perfect example right there, right next to him in the locker room, Pascal Siakam, of somebody that had to go and work through the G League to kind of get his way back up. And so you're right. I think it is a sign that they do really believe in him. It's just a matter of not having enough minutes right now for him. So in due time, I think that he is going to be a big part of this Pacers team in the future. I just don't know if it's next year or if it's in maybe 2 or 3 years down the road.
At Alex Golden NBA, by the way, is the X-Post Twitter handle for Alex Golden, the Blue and Golden on Substack, and then, of course, obviously the podcast as well, the Pacers Pod. Let's go back to last night. I thought Aaron Nesmith did Aaron Nesmith things, and by that, Alex, I mean this. Anytime that you can get a guy that can score those kinds of points for you that is never first or second offensive option, but rather strictly is able to score rotationally when things fall his way, oftentimes at the end of a possession, it's invaluable. Can we now safely say that Nesmith is 100% back, or is there still game in him to be elevated towards?
No, I think that he's right there, back to where you felt like he was probably last year ending the season. It's just Aaron Nesmith does what Aaron Nesmith does, and I think people know that he's very good defensively. He's going to hit open shots if they're there. He was kind of struggling, obviously coming back from that ankle injury, just did not look like himself whatsoever. But I think since the All-Star break, he's really looked fresh and really played great basketball since then. And there's a reason why he was so impactful last night. His little 9-0 run there for the Pacers really is what made the difference in the game. And so, like you said, he's kind of like that fourth, fifth option based on who's out there in the starting five. And, defenses aren't going to prioritize him. So if he can make those shots, it just makes the Pacers that much harder to beat. So, he's kind of one of those, like, glue guys that you can't, take for granted because he does so much for this team. And it might not always show up like it did last night in the point side of things, but there's so many little things that he does that impacts winning.
Have you ever seen Hugo? Have you been to a Hornets game and seen Hugo?
No, I don't think I've ever been to the Hornets arena, to be honest with you.
Have you, and this will be the last time I ask about Hugo, but have you seen, have you even watched, it seems to me to be the bottom tier of mascots to that point, right? I mean, it's not even like at All-Star games you see Hugo. I don't know that I even knew that Hugo existed until yesterday. Yeah.
I think I've seen Hugo on TV once or twice, but nothing really stood out to me with Hugo. So, that's probably part of the problem there, right? Pierre the Pelican always stands out. So
I mean, Pierre's kind of cool. It's better than that crab cake baby they used to have, right?
Yeah, that was very awkward. I don't know what they were doing there. I mean, I'm not the king of mascots. I know that's your thing. So I'm sure that I'm just kind of I'm learning. I was really enjoying your breakdown of all this.
No, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Did you just happen to declare me the king of mascots? And I'm down with that. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've heard you go through them all. I mean, I enjoy it. I respect it. So, yes, I would deem you the king of the mascots.
It's okay. I'm telling you, as a mascot aficionado, I'll say that. It's more that I like to think of myself as an aficionado of mascots, right? So, yeah, Alex, let me ask you this. Give me something that you have an above average knowledge of in terms of the finer things, like be it wristwatches or beers or soft drinks or fast food restaurants. Like, what's something that you can differentiate good from bad?
Ooh, I can answer this one.
Eddie, you go ahead while I'm thinking about this.
I was going to say Survivor. I know you're a big Survivor guy. And cereal, right?
Yeah, I'm a big Survivor guy. I like the Traders on Peacock. Other than that, I like Deal or No Deal Island, so I catch reality TV shows.
I'll put it this way. If you're a reality TV show aficionado, Hugo is the party down south of those, right?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It got 2 seasons, and you're like, yeah, what are we doing here? I was so incredible. I was so excited all day. All day was so excited to be able to go watch the Mascots, and then, that's what you end up with. All right, Tyrese Haliburton, Alex, and Haliburton now since the All-Star break, he is at like an 11-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. His three-point shot is falling again. He has that look where he is the step ahead of the game as opposed to vice versa. Is this because, A, he is healthier than he's been and simply needed the All-Star break to get to that? Or B, is it because he finally decided to become more aggressive offensively and that has opened things up?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to make of the health situation right now, right? Because he was almost questionable for a game, was able to play, and had a really good game. I think it was against the Raptors. He was questionable, ended up playing, dropping 33 points. So, that groin injury, I'm sure it's going to be kind of nagging. But honestly, I just think he needed a break from basketball. I mean, he talked about it, went to Mexico, watched, almost 3 or 4 seasons of The Wire, just chilled, got away from everything. And that was exactly what he needed. I think Tyrese has just been putting himself in too many things, basically with the All-Star break being here last year. And then, of course, playing in the Olympics 2 years back-to-back. I mean, he was nonstop busy. So I think a chance for him to kind of just mentally decompress a little bit and get himself ready for the second half of the season or, last third of the season is exactly what he needed. I'm sure, obviously, it's going to help anytime you can take some time off because, look, they've got, 17 games, including last night, in 30 days. So there's a lot of games being played this month. And so he's got to be ready for that long stretch there. But I just think that he's playing with more confidence, and it's a great point. But he's talked about it. He has to become more of a guy that looks for a shot, and I think that's exactly what you're seeing. He's out there, not just taking shots to take shots, but he's aggressively looking for them. And, look, the Pacers are a much, much better team when he does that. So if he continues to play at that level, I think this team is going to continue to win games, and they need him to be that player because he's their franchise player. I know he's not the All-Star this year, but he's still the face of the franchise, so he has to kind of be that initiator, and I think that's really just a mindset thing that he's changed since coming back from the All-Star break.
I have one major question here. When did Haliburton, and this, I was stunned by this, and I think it's super cool. When did Haliburton say that he was, I know that he just said he finished it, but when was the date, Alex, approximately, when Haliburton came out to say that he was watching The Wire?
Yeah, it was after that Raptors game. They asked him about, I think Tony East asked him about, if this play of recent is because of the break at the All-Star, getting some rest at the All-Star break and not having to be involved in anything. And he said, yeah, I started watching The Wire. So then they just kept asking him about it, and he just kept kind of diving into it. So I've actually never seen The Wire. So that's shame on me. But maybe I need to watch it and go to Mexico for a week and, binge watch 5 seasons. But I don't have that time right now, but still, that's one way to spend your All-Star break.
Okay, so if he began on the All-Star break, I'm looking at it here because I'm trying to think because, I'm old and the dates all run together to me, right? So the All-Star break was essentially, I guess, 2 weeks ago? Is that right?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
I mean, that's some pretty – now, I understand it. And I know that, they're on airplanes and there was downtime. The Wire's the greatest television show ever made. It is not close. It is the greatest. It is the most well-written show. It is the most sophisticated show. It is the most intricate show. It is the most timeless because very little about it is not still applicable. It's well acted, all of it. I loved everything about it and became obsessed by it while I was watching it. But I believe it's 52 episodes and each is an hour. That is some serious commitment to blaze through that in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I know. I will say I don't think he finished at that point. I think he got through like season 3. I think he said he has finished it now. I think Dustin Dopirak just asked him last night before the game if he had finished it, and he said, yeah, he had.
So when he said he was watching it, he was not just starting it, right?
I would assume so. I'm not sure exactly. He said he'd been watching a lot of chick flicks with his girl, and he said he had to just kind of change it up on the All-Star break. So I don't know if he's been watching, a little bit here and there, but it seems like he watched at least 2 or 3 seasons while he was on vacation.
What's your favorite chick flick?
My favorite chick flick. See, I'm not a movie guy. That's the problem. I have to really think about this. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Okay. Not bad. Eddie,
Yeah.
your favorite chick flick?
No idea.
Oh. Do you guys ever leave the
Cinderella
house?
Story?
We don't watch movies all that often. I didn't grow up watching movies either.
Okay. Which one did you just say, Alex?
I said a Cinderella Story.
Okay.
You know.
How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days isn't bad. That was with McConaughey, right? And am I right in that? And Goldie Hawn's daughter?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, that was a decent movie. He's a Knicks fan, I think, in that movie, so you get a little NBA love with it, right? It's decent.
Yep.
All right, nothing
There's
wrong
one
with
with
that.
Jennifer Lopez. I can't remember that I watched. I can't remember which that one is, but that was pretty good too.
I mean, chick flick, we all can poo-poo it, but deep down, you're like, yeah, it's not bad. It was entertaining.
Yeah,
It was entertaining.
Yeah. Rom-coms.
Do we think, Alex, tomorrow night that the Pacers could get, I'm not going to say a pass. That's the wrong way of saying it because Houston's a darn good team. But could things be falling the way for Indiana because of the fact that Houston goes tonight in Oklahoma City? It's an 8 o'clock game locally, so that means that they're going to get into Indy at probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And then, obviously, tomorrow they've got to be at the Fieldhouse by 7. So is it possible that Houston, we see a watered-down version of the Rockets when they get here tomorrow?
There's a good chance. I mean, yeah, they might be a little bit rusty, and that's a break for the Pacers. The Pacers have had some tough scheduling too. I mean, you think about back in December towards the end, I think it was the 26th, they ended up playing the Thunder, lost a very close game, and had to fly right out and play Boston the next day. And that's just tough. So I think when you're on the road traveling and then you have to travel again for the second night of a back-to-back, it's going to be difficult. So, Houston's deep, though. That is one thing that is good about that team is they have a lot of depth. So they could kind of, figure things out. And if OKC ends up going on this, big run here to start the second half, Houston might kind of pull their guys and save it for the game against the Pacers. But if it's a close game, then that definitely plays in favor of the Pacers in terms of being able to take advantage of a team on the second night of a back-to-back. So I think that the scheduling, for the Pacers isn't great because they do have 2 second night of back-to-backs themselves against the Bucks coming up here in the next couple of weeks, and that is just really important for playoff seeding. So the Pacers are kind of getting, the Rockets side of the deal on this one. So I think they have to take advantage. And if they come out flat against the Rockets after being on the second night of a back-to-back, I think that's more disappointing than anything.
Again, it's the Rockets tomorrow night. Then it's 3 on the road for the Pacers, but 2 of those are in Atlanta. It's kind of unusual. They go Atlanta Thursday, stay overnight, play Atlanta again on Saturday. Then they're in Chicago. And then, as you'd mentioned, starting next week, a week from tomorrow against Milwaukee at home, but you're coming off of the trip to Chicago. So we'll see how that all factors in. Last thing I would ask, Alex, is this. If there's an area right now that you feel like the Pacers, because to me, even though they've lost 2 of 4, I realize, it does feel like now that they're healthy, they are capable of kind of being on all cylinders. What's the one piston to you that seems like it still needs to be tuned up for them?
Yeah, I think rebounding is just where I would probably land because if you look at the month of February, they finished dead last in rebounding. And I understand Miles Turner was not out there for about 5 of those games, so you're playing a lot of your backup minutes with Obi Toppin at the 5 and things like that. So I understand they were put in some weird situations, but just Rick Carlisle has talked about it multiple times, how when they win the rebounding battle, they usually win games. And they've not been winning the rebounding battle. I think they've won the rebounding battle twice, all of February, and then this month I don't think they've won yet either. So it's just one of those things where if they can continue to, just be aggressive on the glass and do it as a team thing, that to me would help them. It seems like too many times they allow teams to get offensive rebounds and get second chances. And that stuff to me is like stuff you got to clean up, especially come playoff time. So if they can, figure things out in terms of the rebounding side of things, I think that to me is where I'd be, the most happy if they can figure that out because, it's a possession game. And if the other team has more possessions, there's a better chance they can get more points and beat you. So that to me is what's really important.
At Alex Golden NBA on the X Post Twitter, and then, of course, Blue and Golden on Substack as well. Alex, appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Eddie. We'll see you.
Alex Golden joining us on the guest line. Eddie, you said you didn't watch a lot of movies.
Nope.
I'm with you on this. It's a different world, I realize, in terms of, even though I think now people are starting to go back to the theaters somewhat, but for so many people, the Oscars have been, staple viewing and a big thing. It does feel harder to watch now because so many of the movies, you're like, man, I haven't seen any of these. And so many, there is You talk about a sign of the times. The number of Academy Award winners last night that thanked Netflix. I mean, literally. I mean, it felt like every third recipient was saying something about Netflix because they were part of a movie or a documentary or something that was streamed as opposed to being in the theater. And, it's just different, right?
Okay, I guess I thought of a couple that I've seen. Pretty Woman.
That's a good one.
Grease. Is that technically a chick flick?
Boy, that's a
Rom-com?
good question. That almost feels like his
Musical?
Die Hard a Christmas movie.
The Proposal.
Okay.
Mean Girls.
Okay.
Legally Blonde. Because of my sister.
Yeah, I mean.
Both of those.
Did you ever see Sweet Home Alabama?
No.
Boy, is Grease a chick flick? That's a.
Aaron Brockovich. That was one my mother loved.
Aaron Brockovich was a good movie. Julia Roberts is an attractive gal for sure. Boy, is Grease. I'm still hung on this. Is Grease a chick flick? But, it might be, Eddie. I don't know that it would be classified as one, but it has all the markings, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's love story, bad boy that falls in love with the sweet girl, ends up, it is the ultimate love story. There's music involved.
I haven't seen 50 Shades of Grey or The Notebook.
The Notebook, I think I've seen. I've not seen 50 Shades of Grey. I'm still hung up on the Grease thing because you're right. I mean, I saw Grease in the theater 3 times because I was 6 years old and we had just moved to Indianapolis, and my oldest sister had, and this is remarkable, but she had already immediately latched onto a group of friends. Susie McComb, Lucy Chalian, Mary Turchin, Jennifer Flanagan, who were all like big sisters to me. Every one of them, they treated me great. They were great. And they would go, they went to see Grease like 3 days in a row, and I had to tag along. These poor girls had to bring me along because my mom was busy doing, we just moved in stuff. My dad was working, so it was like they were my babysitter. That's a great question. Is it a chick flick?
I'm just looking up a list now of chick flicks.
Does it list Grease?
Yes.
Does it really?
There's some that do, some that don't. 27 Dresses, I've seen that one.
Okay.
Friends with Benefits. And then, of course, the other one that's Crazy Stupid Love.
Okay.
And then what's the...
Crazy Stupid Love was...
that's Ryan Gosling and...
Yeah, it wasn't... what's his name in it? No. That guy. Yeah.
Yes. Steve Carell.
Steve Carell, thank you. I don't know if I'd list that
Crazy Rich Asians.
Okay, that kind of is a chick flick, yeah.
Hitch.
When Harry Met Sally is a great one. Hitch, somebody asked if that's a chick flick. I would list that more as a comedy, but it's good. Yesterday, somebody asked me a question that I thought that is a perfect question for me to explain on the radio.
Miss Congeniality. I think I just butchered that, but...
Miss Congeniality, decent.
Yes.
Sandra Bullock, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I haven't seen it.
I think we just discovered a new interest of Eddie's.
You said Salma Hayek earlier.
Salma Hayek or Penelope Cruz?
Salma Hayek.
Like tomato, right? You're pretty good either way.
Yeah.
But somebody asked me to explain something, and I thought it is a perfect thing for me to explain on the radio and let people know something they saw yesterday that they may not be aware of what they were watching. I'll tell you what next. We have some tickets to give away.
Fall start. Jake
That's right.
Query. Do you want to redo that? I'm just kidding. Yes,
Well,
we do.
actually, when it comes to playing the little thing that says Querying Company, I would say delay of game.
Todd Meyer was showing me a meme, so
So,
I was distracted.
but we do have tickets to give away, correct?
All this week, Sir Jake. We have
And
tickets to
how
give away.
And what are we giving away today, please?
So every day this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we will be giving away a pair of tickets for a listener to go see Pantera.
Heck yeah, let's go, man.
That is September 5th. That is a Friday at Ruoff Music Center.
That's Jenny Goldhammer's birthday. September,
It's whose?
What's that?
It's whose birthday?
Well, Jenny Coulter now. If you're at Pantera at Ruoff on that day, you can wish her a happy birthday. It's 2 days after
JMV
mine.
also has tickets to give away later. Some Mary J. Blige.
Nice. So we will be giving away tickets here coming up, the cue to call in just a couple of minutes. But I wanted to explain this. Yesterday, the season opener for the NTT IndyCar Series in St. Petersburg, the streets of St. Pete. And really good crowd. Obviously, the weather and all of that, the visuals were fantastic.
That one always draws well, correct, Jake?
Correct. Because partially, now it's a little early this year, but, you do get some of the, like, Central Indiana or Midwest spring break crowd if they're in the area that are down for it. And I think most people in this area, have family or have been to or whatever Florida, there's familiarity with Florida for certain of
They
the
got
area.
a condo down there or something?
Or, a lot of people, my grandparents live down there, whatnot, right? Or yes,
Yeah.
have a place. But during the race, and what I'm about to say, if you are a fan of IndyCar or of racing, I'm going to ask for your patience here because I'm going to, and I think most people that are fans of racing, what do they talk about? They always talk about, we want to get more attention, more eyeballs on racing. And, we'll try to do that. Alex Palou is going to join us tomorrow, who won the race yesterday. And
Winner, chicken dinner.
that is correct. Eats chicken, has a chicken dinner every time he wins.
I'd love to know how he stayed in shape with all this chicken he's had
That's
the past 3 seasons.
also a good question, right? Because he's won a lot. But here is the question that people asked me, and I'm going to do this for people who were newer viewers or passerby viewers or not. And so if you are a fan of IndyCar, I'm going to ask for your patience in the understanding that what we're trying to do is get more people like you, because I know IndyCar fans are invested in the sport, and they're like, man, we got to get more people. So that's what we're going to try to do here.
So what are we doing, Jake?
I am going to do a slight 2-minute explanation here.
You're going to educate our audience, right?
That is correct. What do we try to do on this show, Eddie?
Educate and entertain.
That is correct. During the race, a lot of people ask me, they're like, Jake, what is the deal with the green tires versus the regular tires? Now, what I'm about to say is obvious to a race fan. But for those of you that are a passerby or a newer viewer, and you can feel free to send me a text or send me a tweet and let me know if I'm speaking something that indeed was a question to you, or if I'm helping out in any way, shape, or form of kind of illustrating some of the stuff behind the scenes or a little more inside baseball of auto racing.
What about this, Jake?
Strategy.
What if they also ask some other questions and you take note of them and we ask them to
Correct.
Alex Palou tomorrow?
We can do a little mailbag with that, right? Yeah, I'd be happy to ask Palou questions that people have. Okay, so in a road and street course race, this is not applicable to ovals, but there are IndyCar races on 3 different disciplines: road courses, street courses, and ovals. Ovals are obviously what you have here, permanent fixtures, and they range in size. Some are Iowa 7/8 of a mile, some are 1.5 miles. Indy is a 2.5 mile oval. Road courses are permanent circuits that have both left and right-handed turns. Mid-Ohio, for example, is a road course. Portland is a road course. Those are permanent courses that were built for racing in mind. Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the inside of it obviously has a road course. And then you have street courses. Street courses are temporary circuits that are designed utilizing city streets in different areas. We have a street race in Toronto, a street race in St. Petersburg that you saw yesterday. Okay, and it goes through the streets themselves. Long Beach is the most famous of the street races. In the street and road races where you have left and right-handed turns, there is a strategy that comes into play called the alternate tire. And the alternate tire is, the best way to describe it is this. I want you to imagine that you are going to be in a foot race with somebody, and you both have to wear Levi jeans. If you are wearing Levi jeans that are the ones that you've had forever and they're broken in and they're that comfortable pair of jeans and they're soft as can be, that's what you're going to wear in the foot race, because it's going to be way easier to run than the guy that's buying the jeans right off the rack that basically you can stand up on their own because they have yet to be broken in. So if you're running a 200-meter dash, you absolutely are going with the softer jeans because you're going to move a lot more freely. But if somebody said, if your jeans rip, you're disqualified, and you knew that it was actually a full 26-mile marathon, you might opt for the newer pair of jeans because you know they're never going to rip, and that eventually, as you're running through the race, they're going to soften up and loosen up, and now you have not only the freedom to move, but the peace of mind of knowing they're not going to rip. The softer compound tires are a compound that Firestone, based on each particular race and based on the information they have about the circuit itself and the surface that they're racing on, they come up with a rubber compound on those tires that is a softer, more already broken in tire. So when you, Eddie, if you and I are racing and we come in and we are running the same speed of laps, and we come in for a pit stop, and I put on a set of the primary main tires, I'm putting on my unbroken in jeans. You put on the softer compound tire. As soon as we pull out of the pits, your softer compound tire is like a piece of chewed bubble gum. My tires are the bazooka bubble gum that is not yet wet. And so you have immediate grip. As soon as you pull out, you're going to be able to go faster than me because you have more confidence. You can put your car in cutting off a lower line on a turn or whatever else because your car is gripping perfectly and you're able to put it wherever you want to go. And as a result of that, you are allowed to be, your car is giving you the confidence that you can be more aggressive in the way you drive it.
And this is with the alternate tires, right?
Correct, on the alternate tires. I have to wait for my tires 4 or 5 laps of turning on my tires before they even begin to start to feel that way. Advantage you. Unless it's early in the race and after about 18 laps, and in the case of the softer compound tires, it's more like 5 laps, your tires start to, as we call it, fall off.
Tire degradation?
Correct. They're degrading to the point now where they are those jeans that are about to rip. And if that's the case, you're in real trouble. So, you have immediate gratification with the softer compound tires, but you also need to come in and change off of those at a shorter amount of time than if you go with the primaries. The rules in IndyCar states that you have to run at least after one pit stop, at least once per race, you have to put a set of the softer compound tires on.
Now, is there a specific number of laps you have to run with that?
No, you can do as many as you want when you put the softer compounds on. At least one. You have to do at least one lap on them. So you can go out and try to do 20. You can try to do 5. It depends. The durability of that softer compound tire is different from track to track. That's one of the things over the practice weekends, the practice sessions of the weekend that people are trying to figure out. How long are they going to last? So the strategy of when to go with those tires comes into play, because if you can time it where you have not used yet your green tires and you come in for your final stop with 5 laps to go, you're in pretty good shape because you're going to be fast for those 5 laps or 2 or 3 laps or whatever it may be. So the strategy of when to use those tires versus your competitors is one of the key aspects of the race itself. And that's why when you hear people talking about, are they going to go on the alternates, that's the softer, already broken in tires, or the primaries, that's a strategy that comes into play.
Now, are the alternates tires that they use in like practice to scuff?
Okay, excellent question. When you buy a new pair of jeans at the Gap or Levi's, whatever, and they have the sticker on them that say 36, 32 all the way down them, the tires are the same. The tires all come with stickers on them that indicate that they are brand new tires. That's why we use the term sticker tires. It has nothing to do with the stickiness of the tire. Sticker tires are just like your jeans. It means they've never been worn yet, okay? You can go out for a couple of laps. You are given a certain number. Everybody has the same number of tire sets on a race weekend. During the practice, you can go out and you can either wear a tire completely, a set completely out, and then you say, okay, they're done. They are never to be used again. That's that pair of jeans that my wife tells me I can never wear again. Or you can say, man, we've got these right now. Like the driver will go out and practice and scuff the tires up. That means get them to the point where they're broken in. And right when they're at their sweetest spot, they'll say, bring it in right now, and let's take those off and mark them. And in the race, when we need a perfect set of tires, these things are ready to go. Let's go to them. Scuff tires. Let's go. And so, but you only have so many sets of tires to use over the course of the weekend, so you have to save for yourself. You need a fresh set also during the race, because if you went on just scuffed, you would run out of tires. You would rip through the jeans too many times and have no jeans left to wear, and then you're running around in underwear. And nobody wants to see that. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that is your brief lesson. We'll periodically do this over the course of the year where if people have questions to get up to speed, pardon the pun, we'll do it. All right, we're going to give the tickets next.
Yes.
Eddie? All right,
Yes,
we'll
yes,
do it
yes.
next.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
What number are we going with to give away tickets?
Let's go with 3 because it's the 3rd day of March.
3-3, right?
That's right.
Stephanie McComb's birthday. And my half birthday. When I was a kid, today was a big deal. 52 and a half, baby.
I was about to say happy 52 and a half birthday.
I'm
Little
going to
fun
go to
fact.
Farrell's and get a half a Sunday.
Fun fact for you, Jake. When it's my dad's birthday, it's my half birthday. And when it's my birthday, it's his half birthday. Yeah.
That's kind of fun. 239-1070 is the telephone number. Caller number 3, you are on your way September 5th to see Pantera. I don't know if you guys can hear the noise and racking in the background, but apparently John's breaking things. JMV, which is amazing because you're like half the weight you used to be, but you're still.
Headphone jack over here. It's no longer.
Do you need a headphone jack?
Yeah.
I got news for you. Hang on, John.
I got a headphone jack, but no, this is the
I was
whole.
a Cub Scout. I come
Yeah,
prepared.
the whole thing over the box is all discombobulated now. So yeah, we'll leave the parts out here.
Uh-huh.
So you said a little bit earlier, movies that people generally don't like that you do,
Correct.
and vice versa.
Give me one.
Jaws 2.
Oh, it's terrible, right?
I loved it.
Did you really?
I don't know why I did.
Actually, you know what? Jaws 2 wasn't bad. It was by the time they went to Jaws 3D, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, I couldn't do the 3D thing. That was in 3D. Remember when 3D was kind of the
Yeah.
rage back then?
And I never really.
Yeah, because you had Jaws 3D and then Friday the 13th.
And I never
part 3.
the 3D stuff I could never grasp.
Yeah.
Like I would put the glasses on and sit there and I'm like, I kind of can tell.
Yeah, I got down with Brody killing a shark with a cable.
That was
it
when
was
he.
just some wire at the bottom of the
That's right.
ocean. Yeah, remember he pulled it
I
up
can't remember. Did he? Which one is it? The one where he says sound attracts bite, and so he's banging on the rod. Is that one
he
or two?
bangs on the cable. That's 2.
Yeah. Okay. That was
That's
decent.
where the
yeah,
that's where the water skier got taken down.
Yeah, that's decent.
By Jaws 2, yeah. So, yeah, that's Jaws 2. I don't mind some of the 2s. Caddyshack 2, not so much. Airplane 2, not so much.
I mean, Rocky 2 was cool.
I can do Rocky 2.
Yeah.
I can do Halloween Part 2.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Walking around and nobody in the whole hospital and no lights on or anything. That seems feasible.
I would agree with that. Yeah, Halloween 2. Okay, so
I hate Princess Bride. I've never watched it. Everybody tells me, I can't believe you love the 1980s and you have never seen Princess
I have
Bride.
not
It
either.
looks atrocious.
I've
And
not
I
seen it
refuse to
either.
watch it. I've never seen Gremlins. And Phoebe
Really?
Cates, yeah. Phoebe Cates.
Okay, the three. No, you would know this, but there's 3 things you can't do with the gremlin that makes them turn bad. One is get them wet.
Yeah.
One is feed them after midnight.
Right.
I can't remember. What's the third? Is it a bright light?
I don't know.
They can't be in the light.
I've
maybe?
not seen it.
Can't be in the
I do
daytime.
like Hoyt Axton a great deal, though.
What's that?
Hoyt Axton, wasn't he a lead on that?
Yeah,
The country music guy, Hoyt Axton.
Gizmo was the gremlin, by the way. That was the name. Everybody had a dog named Gizmo for a long time.
Yeah, they
right?
did. I hate. I shouldn't say I hate. That's too strong. I'm not a big fan of Back to the Future. How about that?
Okay, how about this? I've never seen a sequel of Back to the Future. I've only seen the original.
I haven't either.
And I like the original, but I've never seen the sequels.
I think the theme song to Back to the Future, "Power of Love," Huey Lewis, is better than the film.
Okay, how about this? What is the name of Marty's band in Back to the Future?
I don't even. Yeah, I don't.
The Pinheads.
The Pinheads.
And who
I'm
is
not
the?
too good.
Remember the talent, the teacher that says, "Sorry, thank you. You're just too darn loud." That's Huey Lewis. So I always thought "Back in Time" was the better song than "Power of Love."
I like "Back in Time" too, man.
It's a good song. Now, I think I told you, John, when I was in L.A. a couple of years ago, I went to the Burger King where Marty, at the beginning of the movie, when he leaves Doc's house and he gets on the back of the Jeep and then rides past the Burger King.
Yep.
The house, I went to the Burger King, and I'm like, well, where's Doc Brown's house? The house was a papier-mâché structure that they built for the movie. But I went into the Burger King and asked the woman working, I'm like, so how often do people come here and reference the fact this is the Burger King from Back to the Future? And she's like, what are you talking about? She had no idea.
That's too bad.
How could you work at the Burger King and not know that? Wouldn't somebody have told you besides me before that?
Speaking of restaurants, I got a question. I'm rocking Dairy Queen.
Yes, sir.
Old school Dairy Queen. Does anybody know before, during, or now what the hell brazier ever meant? Brazier.
I've always wondered that.
What does brazier? Dairy Queen was the home of the brazier. All right, what the hell is the brazier?
Do you know?
I don't.
I've always wondered if that's some sort of,
brazier.
something
I always thought,
esoteric
okay,
to just them.
char grilled, flame grilled, not fried. So what's the brazier? What do you do here?
All I know about Dairy Queen is this, true story. My mom, anytime Dairy Queen is mentioned, will reference to me that the last meal that she had before I was born was a double cheeseburger at Dairy Queen, and she tells me it was the greatest double cheeseburger
she
she's
had the
ever had.
brazier.
She had the brazier.
The brazier.
That's right.
Eddie, do you know what brazier means? What do you look up, James? What do you got? Brazier.
It says that it's a trademark name for Dairy Queen restaurants that use charcoal grills.
Hey, James, there's a mic over here.
Charcoal grills. I had no idea. Brazier.
Wouldn't it be Kingsford?
Yeah.
Just use that, right?
The Dairy Queen.
John, what's on the
brazier.
big show here today?
We're going to do Tony East. Tony East is at the Mad Ass game. I saw where Jarace had a triple-double.
Double, that's right.
He messed around. He got a triple-double today. I'm sure we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Pacers in Houston. By the way, Houston's got the first of a back-to-back coming up tonight in Oklahoma City. And then we got Stephen Holder. About this whole quarterback competition stuff for the Colts is hilarious.
Isn't it
There's
great?
zero way there's going to be any legitimate competition. You got to push a guy. How far do you got to go to make sure this guy just wants to play here? I mean,
Bring
what the
on
hell?
Jacoby Brissett,
What
baby.
the hell? You got to bench him in his year 2, and now you got to push him to make sure he's going to be able to respond to the competition. Either he's going to be the dude or he isn't. There is zero way they start Daniel Jones or anybody instead of Anthony Richardson in game. Can you imagine if you go through this entire
If you have two
offseason and he
quarterbacks, you
doesn't
have
start?
none, right?
Other than injury, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, two quarterbacks, you got
yeah,
none.
It's just it's all that is just for the fans because the fans are all jacked up on wanting competition. That's your buzzword now, and that's kind of saying, all right, settle down. Here's your competition. It's really not.
By the way, John,
Yeah.
in conclusion, I did a survey in honor of your JMV takeover on Friday night.
Yes.
No, Saturday night, excuse me. In honor of the 80s rendition of the JMV takeover, what is the original origin city of AHA? Ålesund, Norway, Antwerp, Belgium, Oslo, Norway, or Oulu, Finland?
I think it's Oslo, isn't it?
Oslo, Norway is correct. 52% of those who voted knew the correct answer and were listening,
Did
I'm
you
sure.
listen at all? I did 3 soundtracks. I did soundtracks from the 80s all night. I did 3 credit roll songs. Better Off Dead, Teen Wolf. You know what, Teen Wolf, when they were playing well, win in the end. I
Right.
played that, which is awesome. And then Uncle Buck, The Rhythm of Life, I think is what it's called. At the end
What
of
about,
Uncle Buck. I mean, it's stuff you never hear, but they're awesome songs.
Okay, what about
yeah.
Ooh, Mao,
Oh, yeah, by Yellow?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a good one.
I did Donkashane by Wayne Newton.
That's a good one.
In honor of Ferris Bueller, yeah.
That's a good one. All right, John's up
Yep.
next. We will be back with you at noon tomorrow, and we thank you for listening to Query & Company.